Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very happy that you're here. In this video, I will be talking about how the new moon in Pisces on February 27th in the Northern Hemisphere, because I have followers now from different parts of the world, which is super exciting to me. I'm really happy for everyone who has subscribed and who follows me. And I will be talking about how this new moon energy in Pisces can benefit and influence your writing practice. So this time I consulted one of my favorites, one of my trusted go-to astrologers here on YouTube, and that's Nadia Shah. And of course, as always, I will put links to her channel and her video about Venus, which I'll talk about also briefly, and the new moon in the description. So if you don't know me, my name is Johnny. I'm a retired adjunct writing professor. These days, I call myself a word witch. I believe I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories, whether the ones I write and tell or the ones that I help you write and tell. Thank you all so much for being here, for your likes, shares, subscribes, and comments. It all helps kick me up in the algorithm, which allows me to continue to grow my channel. And that means so much to me because I truly do want to build a community of like-minded creatives who embrace the power of story to heal. When I create these videos about astrology and writing, I also like to talk about, what's going on around them, the new and the full moon. I do, if you're new here, I do one for every new moon and every full moon each month, in addition to other videos about writing, because it's all this lovely magical interplay of energies, right? So it's not just the full moon or the new moon. It's also what's happening around it. So I will briefly talk about Venus going retrograde in this video, but this one may be a bit shorter than usual, and I may focus more on the new moon than Venus because I've had a couple of rough weeks with my feline buddy Iris. We were in and out of the vet's office and then the ER a couple of times, and she's doing okay now. At least she's on the mend. But it all definitely took a lot out of me, and I'm playing catch up because the rest of life had to come to a standstill so I could make sure she was taken care of. And it also just wiped me out energetically. So I do want to be sure to get this video out in time for the new moon in Pisces before it happens. And also, if I can make it happen, another video about tropes. So here we go. As I said, this new moon is in Pisces on February 27th, and right on the heels of that, Venus will go retrograde from March 1st to April 12th. All right, so keep in mind, as Nadia puts it, that Venus retrograde asks us to ask ourselves these questions. Do I love this? Is there love here? And this is for all aspects of life. I'm going to specifically talk about it with regard to writing, but we can apply these questions to every single aspect of our lives. And it's a really great time to check in and see if what we're doing, if what we have going on is really what we want, really the way that we want to be spending our time. So with regard to your writing practice, ask yourself these questions about your practice in general. Do you love the way that your practice is going? And where is the love in your practice? Where do you locate love in your practice? And remember, I always say that honoring your impulse to write is an act of self-love. I would also say ask these questions about projects that you're working on. So, do you love the way the story is unfolding? Do you love the way your search for an agent is going? Is there love there? And if not, then start to question like, well, what can I do differently? What can I myself do? Because it all really comes back to us. And I'll say, for me anyway, that goes a very long way, despite the state of the world right now. And I think most of us can agree that it's pretty damn scary. What I keep coming back to is this optimism I have for what I want in my life and the things I can do to make them happen. And it doesn't remove the fear and the questioning altogether, but it really tones it down and keeps coming back to me. So because this new moon will be in Pisces and because Venus goes retrograde mere days later, this means that Venus will retrograde in Pisces. Or actually, no, It will retrograde in Aries, and I'll explain why I stumbled with that in just a minute. It has to do with the timing, and it's so close together. But Venus is in Pisces now. The new moon will be in Pisces, and then on April 1st, Venus will go retrograde in Aries. All right, so it's going to be in this last little bit of Pisces, and then it moves into Aries and goes retrograde. Or it goes retrograde and moves into Aries, is a better way to say that. So Nadia says that Venus and Pisces have this natural connection, that Venus really likes being in Pisces. And there's this very hopeful and romantic vibration about it, right? So keep in mind that while retrograde, Venus will be moving back and forth, like I said, between Pisces and Aries throughout the month of March and into April. So hold that thought for a minute, and we'll talk about the new moon, and then we'll come back to this Venus retrograde. All right? So this new moon will be in conversation, a conversation of tension with Jupiter, which Nadia says creates this kind of over-the-top vibration. So this could translate to being maybe overconfident or overdoing it. And this includes our illusions, our delusions, and our hopes. And we also get with this what Nadia calls a supremely harmonious connection with Mars. So, right, Mars is the ruler of Aries, which is flirting with Venus right now before it goes retrograde. All this translates to more passion around all of these things I've mentioned. So think more passion around overconfidence. So we'll want to keep an eye on that, right? And more passion around overdoing our illusions and our delusions and our hopes. And I'll be honest, when I hear this, I think, well, shit, as if I don't go there enough already, right? Because it's very easy for me to fully imagine what could be and believe it with my whole heart and soul. I really am an eternal optimist, but I will say this, I am probably the grouchiest eternal optimist that you'll ever meet. And it confuses people sometimes, this thing about me, but I am truly ever optimistic that things will improve, that the good things are going to happen, that I want, that the people that I love and know want. But I'm also eternally pissed off at the state of the world, even before all this recent bullshit, because as a sensitive person, I just see too much, but I always have faith. Always. So anyway, we've already been in this Venus energy in Pisces for a while because it's currently there, not yet retrograde. And by the time we get to the new moon, Venus will be appearing to stand still just before she officially goes retrograde. All right, so that Venusian energy gets that much more magnified when it dips back into Aries on the 1st, and that hopeful, illusionary quality. So remember that Venus is about love and beauty, okay? So Nadia says to remember that love would not be possible were it not for faith. And I really love thinking about it like this. So love is possible because we are willing to see the best in people, as she says, to believe in love, and that it is able to be experienced by us. And this new moon will be a reminder of that. She also says that the energy of Pisces, where Venus is right now, speaks to universal love. Okay, so how does all this apply to writing fiction? Well, as I said earlier, and I say all the time, first, honoring your impulse to write is an act of self-love. Also, to write believable characters and to stay in our integrity and tell their stories with honesty, we also must love them. So I hope that you feel love for your characters. I really do. And if you don't, that's usually a sign that you haven't gone deep enough into their psyches and their hearts and their souls. Like, I really think every character we write, especially our protagonists, I think we need to fall in love with them. So this whole idea about Venusian love, love and beauty at this particular moment, also might mean love for the written word. So for the written word of others and for your own. I think it really is important to love our own words and to love the way that we are telling a particular protagonist story. But as I mentioned before, we want to be careful not to cross over that line of being too overconfident, because when we get there, we start to believe that, oh, there's no chance for improvement. I don't need to listen to anybody's feedback. And we don't want to go there. I think it's also important that you have love for your own meaningful stories and brilliant ideas, which of course comes back to self-love that I talk about quite a bit. As Nadia says, think of this in terms of not so much finding love or having love, although if that's what you want, go for it, of course, but think more in terms of being love in your everyday life. Think of being love in your home, in your social circles, at your work, in your town or your city, and in the world. So this directly applies to the life of a writer without a doubt. I truly believe that when we embrace the idea or the intention of being love in the world, of embodying love, we generate a particular kind of vibe, and others can sense it, even if they can't pinpoint what it is. And I'll share a story with you. Years ago, someone I knew wanted me to work on a film project that she was working on. It was about women finding love. And it was a very heteronormative take on love. And I really felt too much importance was put on finding romantic love through relationships with men. And I'm not here to say that this is a bad thing and no one should want that or have that. But back then, at that time, I was really focused on this whole idea of learning how to be love in the world and not spend so much time trying to find it from other people. And this was, I don't know, probably it was over 10 years. I think it was probably in 2013, somewhere in there. So it's been quite a long time. I was interested then in really how to experience love more from the inside out than from the outside in. And I just didn't vibe with the general message of the product or the project, I should say. So I didn't work on it. And I think this is what this energy right now is about. It's about taking note and asking those questions. What do I love about this? Is there love here? And when we consider that Venus is going retrograde in a sign that's about self, so it's going retrograde in Aries. Aries is very much about the self. It's about me. It's about the individual. We do want to think about and ask these questions for ourselves on an individual basis. I think that's very important. But as Nadia says, you cannot have individuals without the collective, and vice versa. You cannot have the collective without many individuals. So we know ourselves as individuals in the context of who we are in relation to others. And I'm going to bring this back around to writing in just a bit, I promise. But think of this in terms of the chakras. So think about the first chakra, that's the root chakra. And this is about identity within the context of the tribe or of family. And the second one is the sacral chakra, and it's about understanding who we are in relation to another. So it's about one-on-one relationships of all kinds. And if this is true for humans, so for those of you really quick who don't know what the chakras are, or don't feel like you understand them, they come from Hindu teachings, and they basically are levels of human development. So if it's true for us, it's also true for our characters as well. And I use these principles in my writing through the body method, which is based on the 7 main chakras of the body. All right, so in terms of your writing, think about your protagonist and other characters. Who do they know themselves to be? How do they perceive themselves within these contexts of the tribe, the family of origin, and one-on-one with other characters? So this can be a big help when developing characters, if you can think of it along those lines. And it could be that maybe that's what your entire story is about, your protagonist attempting to individuate from their family of origin. Could be a coming-of-age story. It could be about your protagonist wanting to break away from a relationship. And so that kind of story would be very focused on how this character sees themselves in those contexts, right? How do they or have they perceived themselves in relation to another person, whether a friend, partner, a child, or an employer, any of those? So asking these questions can also help you as a writer consider your identity as writer within the context of the people you know, right? The people in your life. Do you sometimes not feel like you can call yourself a writer because you don't hang out with other writers? And so in not doing that, you make this assumption, oh, I'm not a real writer. I see this so often in people. So I'm curious, do you have a community of writers who understand your intentions as a writer, who understand what it means to live a writer's life? And even though we writers love our solitude and spending time with our imaginary friends, we do need community, and we need community that supports us, right? So that's why I created the Alchemy of Writing membership group. And if you're looking for support to write regularly, to talk about your project and or get feedback, only if and when you ask for it, of course, and having access to lots of information about the craft and mindset of writing and more, I hope that you'll join us. All right, I would love to see you there. Okay, so back to this new moon. Nadia says that emotions are going to be running very high. We tend to hear this more in relation to full moons, but just because of everything that's going on around this new moon, Venus is involved, Aries is going to get involved. And so I know for some people, this thought of like emotions kind of being front and center is kind of terrifying to some people. Not everyone likes to feel their emotions. I think we water signs, we kind of live there. And so for many of it's just another day for those of us who are of water signs. But I would be willing to bet that most people who write can access their emotions. Otherwise, how would they be able to render the emotion on the page, right? So I'm curious if you want to share in the comments how your own emotions show up in your writing practice. Do they drive your writing? Do they inform it? Does your writing help you process your emotions? Does it dredge them up as you write and then you process them? I'd really like to know this. To me, this is a fascinating part of writing that doesn't, I don't think, get talked about a lot. And I think when people talk about writer's block, they're really talking about writer's fear. And that could be for all kinds of reasons, right? So briefly, very briefly, I want to mention that there's also a square with Jupiter to the new moon and a trine with Mars. All right, so that brings even more adrenaline and hype to this moment that we're in. And then Venus in Aries magnifies, as I said, this passion. So expect things to feel really cranked up a notch or two, likely in the world and within yourself. Nadia says something very interesting about all of this. She says that some of us are going to cultivate some interesting stories during this time. That was her quote. Cultivate some interesting stories during this time. I take that as great news for all of us who write. In fact, I'm doing a 30-day challenge within the Alchemy of Writing online community that plays right into this vibe. And I can't wait to share it with the members in the group. Nadia also advises us to let whatever is going to happen at this time just happen, right? And just witness it. Experience it, and do that with curiosity rather than trying to push against it, run from it. Just let it happen. Do your best to step outside your emotions and see what happens and get curious about it. So again, this is ideal for your writing practice because the best approach to writing is to let go. Let go of trying to control your characters and where the story's going. And this is true always, but when we have certain kinds of energy at our disposal, I figure why not benefit from it? Why not embrace it and let it work for you? All right. And I'll tell you this from working with people for years and years, what I have seen to be one of the biggest obstacles to writing is trying to figure it all out first. It just doesn't work that way. It's like getting to know real humans in life. We don't get to know them by sitting around and analyzing them in our heads, right? In fact, that's sort of dangerous because when we do that, we can make assumptions about them. We can fill in gaps with stories from our past, which might not have anything to do with the person that we're getting to know. We only truly get to know them by spending time with them, having conversations with them, and hearing them talk, observing how they behave in different situations and with different people. And in the world of fiction, we only get to know our characters by writing about them, by watching them walk through scenes and have conversations, and by getting inside their heads. And we can only do that if and when we write. Okay, so it's the writing that figures it out for us. So I would say during this time, always, absolutely, but during this time, get curious. Ask your characters why they are responding the way they are. Ask them what it is they want and how they think taking this action they seem to want to take will help them get where they want to be. And then you as the writer get to learn from them and you get to decide if or how the new insight informs the story. So this is where your higher wisdom comes into play. It's there. It's always there. And keep in mind that Venus only goes retrograde once every 18 months or so. So really honor these next 6 weeks and what they have to offer. Nadia also says that this is a time where hope and empowerment and determination all come together. All right. So she says that March is a significant month and that if you are looking for insights or wisdom or positive change, this month will offer us the experiences to get what we're looking for. All right. So what are you hopeful for in your writing life? And I hope that whatever that is, that you feel more empowered and determined to make it happen. I mentioned a while back that I am planning to take matters in my own hands and get my novel out into the world, right? So no more being at the mercy of agents, big five publishers, or small presses. And I'm definitely going to run with this energy for myself. And I hope that you do as well. Looking ahead a little, keep in mind that later this month, Venus will meet Neptune, all right, at the very end of Pisces. Okay, so Venus is in Pisces now. It's going to retrograde into into Aries on March 1st, and it's going to hang out there and give us all that amped up, passionate energy around all this other stuff. And then near the end of February, it's going to dip back into Pisces, okay? So Venus will meet Neptune. Neptune rules Pisces, okay? I hope you're following this. So Venus will meet Neptune at the end of February, at the very end of Pisces. So each sign has a degree, and the 29th degree is kind of a pivotal degree in each sign because it's the very end of it, and it can be very transformational. All right, so to try and make better sense of this, Neptune rules Pisces. So with this planet of illusion, Neptune, moving into its own sign and then crossing on over into Aries, the planet of self and action, so it's kind of following Venus, right? That illusionary energy that I mentioned earlier will be that much more magnified, okay? So I know I'm going to be watching myself so I don't get carried away with who knows what in my mind. And I will also be really laser focusing this inclination of mine to really see the best outcome. I'm going to focus that on my writing. And I think when we apply this to our writing practices, and because we write fiction, I like to think of this illusionary energy as something that can serve us well. So I hope for this whole month and into April that you will really embrace your imagination and let it do its magic. So I want to ask you, do you know where the imagination comes from? Is it part of your subconscious? Not really. So the subconscious is where our deep inner wisdom lives. We all have this. And some believe that our subconscious is actually our physical bodies. And I really like thinking of it this way. Neuroscientist Candace Pert is known for having said the body is the subconscious mind. There's no separation between the two. So the imagination comes from two specific areas in the brain, the hippocampus and the amygdala. So I will admit, I didn't know where these two important parts of my brain were located. So I found a graphic of a brain online. And if you're curious, I recommend you do the same. Check it out. And I recommend this because I think for those of us who are very visual, it helps to know where to focus our energy. So for me, if I can focus, in essence, what part of my brain to be kinder to and to be more aware of, then I can really use it more to my benefit. All right. So they are both very small in comparison to other parts of the brain, but they're very important to everyone, I would argue, and maybe especially so to fiction writers. So as Nadia says, when this happens later in the month, we'll get to experience what a hyperdose of Neptune in lovely Venus is like just before it moves into the fire sign of Aries, where it will stay for a few months. All right, so get ready for it, lovely writers. I like the feel of this a lot, and I hope you're able to let it help you write better, more often, with more intention, all of it. As always, sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.